our business correspondent, Owen Fairclough, is now with me. And Owen, there are people who are, not us, but there are other people watching the show that might not have been born. They don't know anything about 1989. They don't know about 1988. They don't know about anything that happened all the way before that. But this was big, and you've got more on it.
Phil, it was so monumental back in 1989, revolutions across Eastern and Central Europe, that one writer called this the end of history, because everything we thought we knew had simply been turned on its head. You're right, Berlin certainly remains the most potent and visible symbol of that moment. Germany still has divisions, as you said, Phil, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But first, let's listen to Constance Stelzenmüller. She's a Germany expert at the Brookings Institute think tank, and she was a student in 1989 watching the revolution in Germany from overseas. I asked her what goes through her mind when she sees those pictures now.
It was a complete miracle. I was studying in America at the time, going to graduate school. I had grown up with this idea of the wall as a sort of stone metaphor of World War II and the Holocaust and our guilt and responsibility for that. My generation thought it was going to be there forever, and as a reminder. And we also were incredibly ignorant, at least I was, of what was beyond it, both in East Germany and the rest of Eastern Europe. So when a friend called me up and said, "Wall's down, turn on the TV," and I did, and I saw these people standing there, dancing, embracing on the wall, I burst into tears, which surprised me hugely because I didn't even know I cared. And the other thing was, I realized in that moment that I had completed, that there has been a huge world out there that I hadn't understood. I did understand that my life had changed in that moment. And I decided, I'm going back, I'm not staying in America.
It's hard even today, perhaps, for people to imagine that in a country where people speak the same language, they could be foreign to each other after the wall came down.
Well, it's kind of like your long-lost family whom you haven't seen in 45 years and being reunited with them, and you know their family, you know you're related, and you look at them, you see, oh, these people have led completely different lives. It was incredibly moving. I'll tell you one thing that I always thought at the beginning, and I still think I recognize. East Germans, like I think other East Europeans, tend to look you in the eyes for a lot longer than Westerners do. Westerners don't lock into you like these people do, and it was because they needed to find out whether they could trust you.
Back in November 1989, things were moving very quickly. Did the authorities anticipate what would be needed to bring these countries together? Did they anticipate how much it would cost? We read a lot about the cost to Germany and so on. Was there any kind of planning for this, given that things were moving so quickly?
There are different estimates. I mean, there are billions, tens of billions that this has cost in the last 25 years since reunification. And all of us Germans are still paying the so-called Solidaritätszuschlag, the solidarity tax. That's a tiny chunk of my income. But I think it's, it is solidarity. I think it's the least one could do. But the reality is, at the time, of course, nobody had any idea what this was going to entail. East German industry was completely decrepit. I remember as a young journalist visiting some of those factories, and they were like something out of the 19th century.
Can Germans today celebrate being German? I remember being in Germany for the World Cup in 2006, and football fans coming up to me and saying, this is the first time we feel that we can wave our flags and celebrate being German. And of course, your country won the World Cup this summer. Can Germans across the whole of Germany celebrate this?
I think now we can. It took us a very long time. I'm old enough to remember times when you were very, very careful about admitting you were German even when you were traveling, and where you certainly wouldn't wave flags at anything, and certainly not at a soccer game. That was considered something for hooligans. And you're right, that changed in 2006. And then now this year, of course, was very special with the World Cup. That was another huge party. I think it was a tricky moment in the Brazil game, after, the third score. And as the scores started mounting up, people became very silent and very embarrassed. There was a joke going around afterwards that we would now say, no longer say, don't mention the war, we'd say, no, don't mention the score.
Don't mention the score. That was Constance Stelzenmüller from Brookings think tank here in Washington, D.C. Phil, you heard it there. Germany may be the only country that could beat a team as decorated as Brazil 7-1 in a World Cup semi-final and feel bad about it.
I don't know how bad they really feel, but it's cool to see all those images, but at the same time, a lot of people don't realize that even though it's one country, there's still a divide.
Absolutely, and once the wall came down, there was that stampede towards the west from all those people who'd been newly liberated. Eastern Germans went in droves looking for work in the wealthier part of what was West Germany. Today, growth is stuttering somewhat across the country, and that's leading some businesses and job seekers to look east once again.
A short walk is all that separates the East German town of Görlitz from Poland. But after the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, many here looked the other way.
We're the most eastern point in all of Germany, the easternmost city, and at first everything was oriented to the west. Everyone wanted to work in the west, to see the west. That means we had to deal with a massive exodus.
By the time the wall fell, Görlitz was already run down. And when almost half its newly free population left, it became one of the poorest regions in Germany. Closer economic ties with its newly prosperous eastern neighbours have helped inject some new life.
With the EU membership in 2004 of the Czech Republic and Poland, many things changed in the city, and Görlitz can really profit from that, from the situation.
Görlitz's old town has been refurbished, drawing tourists and investors. Key to the regeneration, a new luxury shopping centre in a once grand department store aimed at Polish day trippers. Movie lovers will recognise it as the set for the Grand Budapest Hotel.
And you think I did it?
It's scheduled to open in 2016.
They can walk from Poland to here and shop and walk back again to Poland. So this is for us a very important target.
And it's not just shoppers heading over the border. Polish manufacturers are also setting up shop in the region, giving them some made-in-Germany kudos.
So, Owen, we know that Germany, since the fall, has done well. The economy, and you get the euro, and all this other stuff, that's great. But at the same time, you've done some analysis on the two parts, both East and West, and how they did.
You mentioned two countries, Phil, and if you just look at this map, for example, of Germany, look at unemployment rates across Germany. We see in Western Germany unemployment around 5.5%, but look at Eastern Germany, it's almost double, 9%. Now, Germany as a whole is doing, as you say, quite well. Unemployment there around 6.3%. Many European countries would give a lot right now to have an unemployment rate as low as that.
Now, if you think about the solutions, we've talked a lot about this program, and Germany was the darling for a while, but this year a little bit has changed, and the problems they're having are being noticed more and more. What's the solution now for Germany?
One of the problems, manufacturing is down, and also domestic consumption. Germans have never really been big consumers. They save an awful lot of their money, around double what people here in the US would save of their salaries. A little bit more inward consumption would help. That's people spending their money. That would lead to a bit more investment and maybe create jobs in those places in the old in Eastern Germany that are lagging behind right now.
I think I know what the problem is, that they're too disciplined to go and waste and spend money like the way you and I probably do. Owen, great to have you here.